Hey, Kimiko, come in here. Real quick, what do you think of the finished room? So from what I've heard, your child will at some point need their own room for sleeping and stuff like that. So we decided to move my wife's office out of one of the rooms in our house and make that into a room for the baby. And just like with any home DIY renovation or project, we wanted to get the most bang for our buck in the space that we had. So my wife got a little creative and came up with the idea to completely remove the closet in that room and use it as open space. Our house has these old closets that aren't super useful. They have these cabinets that are high up and they're really deep, so they're hard to use efficiently. And our plan was always to take these out and put something new in down the line. So we figured we might as well take this one out for now, use it in this new configuration, and then when it makes sense, we'll put in something new. So I guess the first thing to do is clear out the room, then we can knock out this closet. Sure, we won't have the same storage options, but we figured a baby doesn't have a lot of belongings, so the need for large amounts of storage is pretty low. Hey, what are you doing?
Oh, just buying more stuff for the baby.
And getting the closet out was pretty easy. I was able to take it apart without much drama, a little bit of cutting, and a little bit of elbow grease, and it was nothing more than a memory at this point. With a new blank canvas, I needed to get a couple things taken care of before the fun began. The closet floor was actually a small platform, so underneath there was no flooring and it was straight to the subfloor. Our plan was to use some peel and stick tiles for this portion of the room, which would very likely be replaced down the line when a closet goes back in, so I wanted to be sure I could easily remove whatever I did for the floor here. Because there was no flooring and I wasn't going to be adding any flooring, I needed to level the closet area with the rest of the floor in the room, so I used a sheet of 1/2-inch thick plywood. I know the walls in my house are anything from straight and square, so I used a sheet of cardboard to make a rough template, which I could use to cut the plywood fairly accurately to fit the space. And like a pro, I nailed it on the first try. One of the funny things about doing these home renovation type projects is the constant feeling that I'm doing something wrong. As a furniture maker, for the most part, there aren't really any rules. You make stuff, and if you can sit on it or eat off of it, it's a chair or a table. But when doing carpentry in a building or a home, which I do very little of, it feels like there are rules that I should be adhering to, most of which I don't know. So when I was adding in the plywood to level the floor, I definitely was questioning if this was the right way to do it, and the only bit of reassurance I had was that at some point this would be coming out, and then I could do it the right way if this wasn't the right way already. Either way, I screwed the plywood down, then got to work on the baseboards and wall trim, or I guess you can call it a chair rail if you're into that sort of thing. Because of where the closet was, I needed to fill in a few spots. I needed to run baseboards around the entire closet section, then extend the wall trim to the wall in this corner, as well as finish it off on this short wall. The reason I wasn't extending the wall trim around the entire closet area was because the plan is to wallpaper this wall and this wall. More on that in a minute. But first, a couple quick cuts on the miter saw, and I could finish up the wall trim, then move on to the baseboards. The baseboards were fun because I've always wanted to try and cope moldings on a miter saw. I first measured and cut the long span at the back of the closet and got it set in place. Then for the inside corners, because my walls definitely weren't at 90 degrees to each other, one of the better ways to get a clean inside corner is to cope one side of the corner baseboards. And in my case, I was doing the shorter pieces on either end of the closet. There are a lot of ways to cope moldings, but one technique is to use a miter saw to essentially trim away material at an angle. I don't really want to get too in the weeds about doing this, because this type of work certainly isn't my cup of tea, but the main beats are to first cut a 45-degree bevel onto the end. Then with the saw still at 45 degrees, you can start to carefully trim away the material that is outside of the paint line. This takes a bit of feel to get it right, but it was pretty easy once you get it figured out. To get into the two circular areas here and here, I then tilted the saw to 45 degrees as well, which allowed the blade to come in at an angle and trim away the material here. And to finesse any areas that I couldn't quite get with the saw, some quick hand sanding did the trick. The battery on my miter saw actually died just as I was finishing the second of the two joints I needed to cope. So this spot here had to be done completely by hand. Not a big deal. But regardless of all that, you can see here it gives a really nice tight fit without trying to get bevel cuts to match in a non-90 degree inside corner. Okay, so before I could install the baseboards and wall trim, we needed to paint the rest of the room, install the peel and stick floors, and wallpaper. So painting is, well, painting, and watching people paint is right up there with watching paint dry on the least interesting things to watch list. So we painted the walls, let's move on. After that, we installed the peel and stick flooring. This stuff was surprisingly easy to install and really gives a nice finished look to the floor with just about the least amount of work possible. I made sure the plywood I had laid down was smooth and clean, then it was just a matter of lining everything up and sticking it down. So after riding the confidence of laying down the peel and stick flooring with relative success, we went to work on the wallpaper. We had done some wallpapering in another room in our house, but it was just a repeating pattern. In this room, we're doing one of those murals, so it felt like the room for error was a little bit lower and the stakes were a little bit higher.
Oh, this is so hard.
We started on one side and worked our way across. Wallpapering is one of those things that feels like you're doing it wrong the entire time, and it takes a lot of patience and attention to detail. One of the nice parts about these murals is that each panel has a bit of overlap. So what you actually do is hang the next panel slightly on top of the previous one, then run a knife down the overlapped section, making sure to cut both layers at the same time, then pull out the two off-cut sections, and you end up with a near perfect seam. Pretty nice.
Hey, sorry to interrupt. I know we usually have a clever segue, but this week we're a little short on time. So instead of that, why don't we enjoy some slow-mo clips of my cute dog while I thank Squarespace for sponsoring today's video. Both Chris and I have been using Squarespace to build and maintain our websites for years now, and honestly, it's one of the best choices we made when starting our businesses. At the time, I had no idea what I needed to do to build a website, but Squarespace makes it super easy to get up and running with plenty of professional looking templates to choose from, as well as making things like purchasing domains really simple. Squarespace also has plenty of e-commerce tools to help you grow your business. Things like inventory management, a simple and secure checkout process, and unlimited products allow us to easily manage online transactions and not get bogged down with mundane tasks so that we can devote more time to doing the things we enjoy, like renovating a closet or watching slow-mo clips of my cute dog. So if you're thinking about starting a website, or even if you already have one, go check out Squarespace to see if it might be a better option for you. Head over to squarespace.com/4eyes for a free trial, Then when you're ready to launch, use the offer code 4eyes to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. All right, thanks Squarespace. Now let's get back to finishing this room.
So now with the walls painted, the floor stuck down, and the wallpaper on the walls, I could finally put the baseboards and wall trim in place for good. We could then bring the dresser I built a few weeks ago and put it in place. I made an entire build video for this, and we have a set of long-form video plans for this piece, as well as a bunch of others. So I'll put a link in the description if you're interested in trying your hand at making some of the stuff you see us make on this channel. Finally, I needed to make a little transition strip to go between the hardwood and the new peel and stick tiles. So back to the shop to cut a piece of red oak to proper width, then mill it down to my desired thickness. From there, I cut a steep bevel on both long edges to make the transition on the floor as smooth as possible. Then cut a shallow, wide groove on the bottom side using my router table and a large surfacing bit, which allowed me to do this cut in only a couple passes. I wasn't sure if this was totally necessary, but this groove is on most moldings and trim, and it seems there are a lot of reasons to have it, and it was easy enough, so why not? Now back at my house, I could mark out the length I needed, then give it a quick cut and a matching stain, and it was ready to put in place. Kimiko, come in here. What do you think of the finished room?
I'm really happy with how it turned out.
And what's your favorite part about it?
I really love that we feel very connected to everything that's in here.
Like what? What do you mean by that?
We've got a lot of stuff incorporated from our past, things that we inherited from our family.
And how do you think Benji's gonna feel about it when he is old enough to have feelings?
I think it'll feel really special that Dad got to make everything for him.
You helped too, though. And Hammy, what do you think?